not recording. So now I'm recording. Cool. So I'm recording this session. So yeah, so that you all can go back and watch it in case you miss anything. So give me 1 second here. Cool. If anything comes up during as I'm talking, I'll try to pause for questions. But if you have a question, feel free to use the raise your hand reaction. So if you go to reactions and raise your hand, then I will be sure to see that. Okay, so high level overview of what we're going to be doing for intermission work. So we're going to start with styling HTML and CSS. So you can think of, so HTML and CSS are really the visual components of the web. So mod 2, we're learning how to build web applications. In mod 1, you learned how to build Ruby applications on your local computer. Now we're going to build applications that other people can see across the internet. So not just people who are using your computer, but people can access your website from anywhere in the world. So HTML and CSS is how we display things to users. That's going to be the first big chunk of work. The next big chunk of work is going to be around databases. So the HTML is what the users see. The database is kind of like what powers the web applications. That's where, if you're using Facebook, the database is going to store your user profile and your pictures and your friends and all that stuff. The stuff that really, the meat that really makes the application work, whatever it might be. So that's going to be our second chunk of work. And then the final chunk of work here is going to be starting to learn Rails. So Rails is the web framework that kind of ties these pieces together. So Rails, and more specifically, it's Ruby on Rails, using Ruby, using HTML and CSS, and using databases, we combine all of those elements together to make fully functioning web applications. And Rails is kind of like the glue that holds everything together. So this really covers like the big topics of mod 2, and we're gonna get you started on them pretty early. So for deliverables, you're going to be creating a new gist on GitHub. I believe you all should be familiar with this. I think, can I get a thumbs up? Did you all do this for, have you all made gist before? Yeah, I think most people have made gist before. So you're going to make a new gist. This just takes you to create a new gist. And then it says copy and paste the markdown from this template. So this is basically all of the questions that you're going to answer throughout the intermission work. This is your main deliverable here. So these are checks for understandings from each of the pieces of the intermission work. So what you can do is you can click on this raw button up here, and this will give you the raw markdown format. So you can just take this, put it into your own gist. It's like my intermission gist. And make sure you add .md at the end of it so that it will recognize it as markdown. Make it public. Make it public. There we go. And all that formatting is copied over. So now all you really need to do is go in and under each question, fill out your answers. So this is your main deliverable for the intermission work. Yeah. Okay, I think we're good on that. Yeah, and this is kind of what I've already said. Each assignment is going to include some checks for understanding. That's what you're going to be completing. So the due date on this is 5 p.m. Not this Saturday, but a week from Saturday. So the Saturday before the mod begins. We really do want you all to be solid on this pre-work. I don't know, solid is maybe not the best word. It's okay if you don't understand everything perfectly, but you really need to get the pre-work done on time in order to be successful in the mod. There is just a lot of content in mod 2. There's just a lot of things to know. And so we want to make sure we have a good baseline so that we can hit the ground running on day 1. Typically, we've seen that students that really have trouble over the intermission work, and not as in understanding the intermission work, but just trouble completing it for whatever reason, things come up. they weren't able to complete it, don't have like laptop issues, whatever it might be. A lot of times that ends up in students not being able to catch up throughout the mod. So we really do want to get this in, get this intermission work in. If there's any reason why you might need to submit it late or you're not able to complete it on time, just DM us, Jameson and I, and we will be happy to chat with you and kind of make a plan for you. But absent of any like extenuating circumstance, really want this in by 5 p.m. on Saturday. All right, so let's get into the actual assignments here. Actually, before I do that, are there any questions that have come up so far? All right, so let's get into the actual assignments. I see one thing here already that needs to be updated, but Lawrence, do you have a question?
Sorry, I guess. Is there anything that, are there any areas or websites you would suggest as resources if we want to brush up on the things in the GIST? Or will that?
I think most of the resources, yeah, are covered in these assignments here. Okay. There are like, because HTML, CSS databases, these kinds of topics are just so ubiquitous. There are lots of resources. In these challenges, we point you to the ones that we think are like particularly helpful, but there are plenty of other resources out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mark.
Just for our classmates in different time zones, 5 p.m. Mountain time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, every time zone that every time we mention will just be Mountain time. Yeah. And is the time zone butler working? I was thinking about this morning when I said, I'll start at 9 a.m. Did anyone get a time zone butler update? No one got a time zone butler. Is anyone not in Mountain time?
I think there are quite a few.
Yeah, we have a bunch.
Lee, did you see it?
No, I was wondering what that was because I have never heard of that before.
Yeah, I thought that was a Slack app that was installed for the entire Slack workspace, but maybe it wasn't. It's like a little Slack bot that just pops up and says like, oh, this was in Mountain time. This would be 8 p.m. in your time zone. Maybe something to look into to install personally to Time Zone Butler, although you probably can't. I think it's already installed. I'll have to double check on that. But anyway, absent of the Time Zone Butler, all the times we give will be in Mountain time. Okay. Anything else coming up so far? Give me 1 second here. Cool. So I do see one thing that's going to need to be updated already. The Ruby versions. Can anyone tell me what version of Ruby have you all been working with in Mod 1?
2.7.2 mostly.
2.7.2. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so these are going to need to be updated for you all to be on 2.7.2. I don't really need you. I don't want you all downgrading to 2.5.3. So I'll update this to be 2.7.2. And then also the Rails version we're going to use needs to be updated as well to 5.2.5. This probably doesn't mean much to you all, but there was a licensing issue with this version of Rails. So essentially we can't use this version of Rails anymore. So now we have to bump up to the next version. So I will update that by the end of today. Yeah, but it shouldn't prevent you from getting started on any of the first sections around styling and databases. Nitia?
Natia, sorry.
Natia,
If we're on the latest version, is that going to be a problem, or do we need to downgrade to 2.7.2?
The latest version, what is it? 3 something?
Yeah, it's 3 something.
Yeah, you will need to, you will want to downgrade. Yeah, you'll want to downgrade, and my guess is that if you're on 3.0, it might be, you might be using the system version of Ruby. Is that ringing any bells?
I have no idea, and every time I install and uninstall, it is very problematic for my system. So I'm wondering if you have like instructions, or if we can DM you if we're in my boat and we need like hand holding through getting it.
Do you? Yeah, we can definitely work through some install issues because, Nitsia or other folks, do you all know if you have the Apple M1 chips, the Apple M1 computers? Head nods, yes, yeah. So
Yes,
this is probably the
understandable.
source. Yeah, and I know Richard and I have already worked through some issues together. So how do we want to do that? What I'm thinking is putting something on the calendar for early next week for like hosting install, like an install party to help you all out, because I also have this M1 chip and it's not always straightforward with getting things installed. So anyway, I will, let me make a note for myself.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, because if you're on the 3.0 version of Ruby, I'm assuming it's because you couldn't get the other versions installed, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Cool. So the get the module tool, or maybe Ruby and Rails versions installation guide might not work for you all if you are having install issues. But it should not prevent you from moving on to the other sections of 2, 3, and 4. Rails tutorial you might not be able to do, but this is the last section. So if you wanted to, if I host an install party on, oh, my monitor went out. Oh, it's back. If I host an install party on Monday, you all should be able to work on the sections 2, 3, and 4 in the meantime. You won't be able to move on to section 5, but hopefully that's enough for you to work on until Monday, when we can like get people more set up. Regina?
Does this markdown have a place that you like, because I've already kind of looked into it a little bit, like the static challenge. Does this markdown have a place that you'd like us to link like the static challenge to, or a way of turning that into?
Yes, yeah, that's down here at the submission. When you're finished, fill out this form. Yeah, it probably should be up here with deliverables. I understand why you couldn't quite see it, but yeah, this is where we'll ask for your name, your link to your gist. My monitor keeps going out. What the heck? And then a link to this repo, and then just a little bit about yourself in terms of your pronouns. Yeah, so that's where you'll turn this in, and this will say 2103 when it's ready. I might have to stop using this monitor. You're welcome. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to adjust here and stop using this monitor. Don't know what's going on there. Technical issues. Now let's do. Here we go. Okay. I think I'm back up and running. Okay. So yeah, the first thing here is the Ruby and Rails installation guide. If I go into this, this will walk me through installing Ruby versions with RBEMV. However, if you are having issues with installing Ruby versions, this probably won't work for you. And then here is the Rails installation guide as well. So essentially, this will just have to change from 5.2.4.3 to 5.2.5. I'll have that updated, excuse me, by the end of today. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, but these are pretty straightforward until they're not. So we'll definitely host an install party for that. Git module 2 tools. This is just more installing stuff. You should be able to download the Postgres app from the directly from the Postgres app homepage. Yeah, I mean, that should be pretty straightforward. Install Postico and then install Google Chrome. You might be using a different web browser like Safari or something like that, but we really do want you all to get on Google Chrome if you're not already. This has a lot of features in it that are just like very helpful for development. So is a requirement that you have Google Chrome installed. Yeah. All right, so that's some of the setup stuff. And then the next section here is styling, intro to HTML. So what you'll find in most of these assignments is that the checks for understanding are listed first, and these are just copied from that gist file. So this is kind of just a reminder, hey, this is what you should be working on as you're reading through this tutorial, or you're working through this assignment, whatever it is. So then here is the W3 Schools tutorial. This is the resource that I was mentioning before. I think that this is a pretty good resource and is pretty helpful for you all. So we've got links to all of the sections of this W3 Schools tutorial that you should be completing. So if we click on home, this is just kind of like an introduction to some of the things you'll be doing and kind of explaining how the tutorials work. And then the next section is in the intro to HTML. I'm going to skip ahead to something maybe a little bit more interesting, like paragraphs. So what's really cool about these tutorials is that you can just try it really easily yourself. So it'll say, give you a little bit of intro. So say the P element defines a paragraph. Paragraph always starts in a new line, and browsers automatically add some white space before and after a paragraph. Cool, I got a little description. Then I can click on try it yourself here. And I can actually come in here and play with the HTML. So I can change this is Brian's paragraph, click run, and see how it changes on the right over here. Or maybe in later sections, I'll play around with a header tag. So I know the P tag. Let's see if I can use the header tag here for H1. And now I've made a header. So these are really nice. It's very interactive. So you're not just like reading, you're also get a chance to play around with it. So if I go back to our page, there are 18 sections here that you need to work through. The next section, CSS, very, very similar. Checks for understanding at the beginning. And then it has everything. It has a couple of these W3 school tutorials. So everything under this from CSS introduction to CSS fonts. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about like 15 to 20 these tutorials here. And same thing, you can come in here, you can mess around with the CSS. So like, let's say I make this one color of pink, and now it's pink over here, and I can see how that works. So that is how you're going to learn a little bit about HTML and CSS, and then you're really going to put it into practice in the static challenge here. So static challenge is practice using HTML and CSS. You're going to take an image of a web page, so a static image, just a plain image, and you're going to recreate it using HTML and CSS. So this section, how much time should I spend doing this static challenge? We ask you to time box this to no more than 2 hours. So you can really spend a lot of time when you are visually styling something, trying to make it like very pretty and perfect and really just like get into the details like, oh, this border should be a little bit more rounded, or the border should be a little thicker, or the font should be like slightly heavier. You can always do a little bit more, but it is good to know when to walk away. So as backend developers, we really want to focus in on the data side of things, and that's going to be a little bit more important than the visual side of things in terms of backend. So we do want you to time box this. All right, so let's click on this repository, and I think I need to, let me stop sharing for just a second here and get my windows organized.
In the meantime, I have a joke. What do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back?
Stick?
Yep. You're welcome. Thank you, Lawrence.
What is brown and sticky?
A stick.
But
Thank you all. That was a great filler. That was wonderful filler. All right. Okay, so I've got my windows situated. Let's do it. So I'm going to clone down this repo. So I'm going to come over here. Let's do a git clone, paste that in. And as I mentioned, we're going to be copying an image. So image files are a little bit bigger. So that's why it's taking a little bit longer to download from GitHub. All right, so I'm actually going to flip back over here so that we can look at the README in this nice format. So this repository includes an index.html file that links 2 CSS files. So reset includes styles that overrides default styles by your web browser. So essentially, reset is a file that you don't need to touch. It just kind of like sets up the static challenge for you to work on it kind of from a blank slate. Main.css is the empty file provided as a place to store styles that you define. So main.css and index.html are the 2 files where you're going to put your HTML and your CSS. So the expectation is for you to choose one of the images in the completed directory and do your best to create a file that mimics the style pages that they show. So if I click on one of these links here, I'm going to open it in a new tab. This is just going to be a plain image of a web page. So maybe I could zoom out a little bit to get a better view of it. Actually, I think I'm just going to open this over here. Images, or actually, no, completed challenge 1. There it is. So this is a little bit better of an overview. So this is what a web page might look like. And so my job as a student doing the static challenge is trying to copy this. Let me go back over here to the directions and see if there's anything else interesting in here. Yeah, so there is a file here called sitecopy.md that has the, so your job, if I look at this image, you don't have to like go find this specific image and you don't have to go find this text. You already have that in images. I think it's 1 here. Yeah, so 1.jpg has this image for challenge 1 right here. And then I think all of the, text is down under this sitecopy.md file. So this lorem ipsum paragraph right here, that is right here as well. Lorem ipsum, blah, 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 blah. So your job is not necessarily to recreate the text in the images. It's kind of just to put them on the page. And I think that's all the instructions. Yeah, it says add to the index HTML and style sheets main.css. Feel free to organize the HTML however you like, create whatever styles you like. Practice styling if you'd like additional practice. Yep. Okay, so that's all the setup instructions. And now I want to do a little bit of just demoing of what this might look like for you all. So I think the first thing is let's just see if we can look at our blank web page here. So there are a couple ways to do this, but what I like to do is from the command line, use the open command. So this is a helpful terminal command if you've never used it before. This is the same thing as if you just like are in a Finder and you like double click on something, it'll just automatically open a file in whatever application it thinks is appropriate. So if I open index.html, my terminal is going to say, oh, this is an HTML file, so I should open up in the browser. And so you can see here, the path up here is file, and then it's this full file path to my index.html file. So this is where I'm seeing my blank web page. And so if I go back to my, where do I want to go? Let's go to this image here. This is what I'm trying to create. So maybe the first thing I'm going to do is try to create this header up here for 5280 landmarks. So I could go over to my HTML and put a header for 5280 landmarks. And the site copy MD file does have this, but I am fine typing out these characters. And so now I've added some HTML. I can go back over to my browser, refresh, and now I can see my header there. Okay, but it's still a little small. So I'm going to need to add some CSS to style it a little bit. So I'll go into main.css and let's give this an ID. So we'll say ID equals, I don't know, let's just call it header. And then we'll target that header and we will say, I want the background color to be red. So let's go over here. And now that's red. And now I want the text, so the color, to be white. And now that's white. And I want it to be a little bit bigger. And so now this is where my CSS knowledge gets a little strained here. Let's just go with 30. Wow, I cannot believe that I got that. How about 50? And there we go. So now I'm getting much closer to recreating this header here. And so I would just go through the rest of it and add in all these elements. And that's what it should look like. So that's everything you're going to be doing for the styling section. Yeah, what questions do you all have? Mark?
Just to confirm, do we just pick our own website or just use the ones that are given in the README or?
I would like you to use the ones that are in the README. There are 3 in here. So this one's like pretty similar here. And then challenge 3. Is also pretty similar. So it's kind of all just like different styled versions of the same content here. So I would prefer that you do one of these, but if you would like more practice, feel free to pick your own website and do it.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Richard?
Just a general question about the program for Mod 2 and forward. How much front-end stuff are we going to be using? Like, yeah,
that's a good question.
Are we going to be structuring the front end a lot, or is that going to be already done for us? We just plug the back into it. Do we?
Yeah, so you are going to be building your front end, so to speak, which is we are really like building a full web application. So once you get into Mod 3 and Mod 4, we'll start to talk a little bit more about like splitting out the back end and really just having the back end be its own thing. But for Mod 2, we're going to be doing everything so that we can kind of understand how our job as backend developers fits into the context of an entire web application. So we are going to be doing some, I would say we're doing styling, but I wouldn't necessarily say we're doing front-end development. So front-end development is where you are using JavaScript to make your web pages really interactive and functional. We are not going to do JavaScript in Mod 2. We are really just going to make pages that are like pretty basic. Really, what you learn in terms of HTML and CSS in the pre-work is the extent to which we will cover HTML and CSS in class. Or well, that's not entirely true. We do have one exploration in week 2, but we are not going to spend a lot of time talking about the styling portions. Great question. Any other questions? All right. I think I am going to keep going. I know it's a little long without the POM, but I think we'll be able to finish before 10. Okay, so that's it for the styling portions of the intermission work. The next portion is our intro to SQL. So again, checks for understanding listed first, so that you are listed near the top so that you know what you should be answering as you're working through these. So the first thing is this Jumpstart Lab tutorial. So this is a nice like background into SQL and just kind of like how databases work. So this is kind of like the main content. And so this will go over a lot of like SQL commands that you can run. This is a pretty nice resource. And so you'll work all the way through this, but you won't get into this SQL section down here. So we're not going to cover the SQL library. So this is your tutorial that you're going to work through. And then the exercises are these PG exercises here. Whoops. So let's jump ahead to the where section. Actually, before that, let's cover some of these time box things. So just like with the HTML and CSS, we do want you to time box these, but the SQL is going to be a little bit more relevant to the database and the backend work that we're concerned with as backend developers. So what we're asking you to do is to time box each section to no more than 2 hours. So there are 3 sections here on basics, joins, and aggregates. So 2 hours each for a total of 6 hours. That's how we would like you to spend your time on this. And it says here, there will be exercises that you have difficulty completing, and that's okay, that's to be expected. There are nice hints, and it shows you answers if you can't quite get it with a hint. So that's fine if you can't quite answer these. Really the goal of this intermission work is to have you all have a baseline understanding of SQL and HTML and CSS moving into the mod, not to be masters of it. So we are going to continue to talk about all of these in some capacity. SQL more than the styling stuff. So let's see what these look like. If I click on where, this is kind of similar to the W3 Schools tutorials. These are really nice because they are very interactive. And you don't have to like go outside your web browser to use these. You can do everything in the web browser. So for example, I've done this one before. Is there a harder one? Okay, cool. Never done this one before, so we'll do it live. So how can you produce a list of facilities that charge a fee to members and that fee is less than 1/50th of the monthly maintenance costs? And return the facility ID, facility name, member cost, monthly maintenance, and facilities in question. So this shows you the schema, which is essentially how the data is organized. And it shows you down here the expected result. And so I can come in here and I can try to fill this out. So let's say, start with this, monthly maintenance. Facilities. monthly maintenance, member cost, name. Yeah. And then let's see where that gets me. And so I can click run this query and it'll give me an X here and it'll show me down here what my code produced. So I produced a table that's very similar, but I get the X because it has too many rows. So it looks like I just got back all of these rows, but I only wanted back some of them. So what I could do then if I'm having trouble with this is click on this hint button and it'll tell me the where clause allows you to filter rows that you want to retrieve. Okay, so that's pretty helpful. Let's see if we can put that in here. So say where what is it? The fee is less than 1/50th of the member cost. Okay, so where is my fee? Guest cost? Member cost. Where member costs less than 1/50th of the monthly maintenance. So monthly maintenance divided by 50. Let's see if that works. Oh, dang it. And I still didn't get it right. So you're working through these, trying to use the hints. The help button is kind of just like general help. So that's not super helpful. But if you can't get it, then you can go down here and click on show the answer and it'll show me the answer. And oh, I forgot to include where the member cost was greater. So then maybe I'll come in here and see if I can add this into my statement. And now I've got the right answer here. So totally fine if you are struggling and can't quite get one of the answers, but make sure that you do look at the answer, read through it, and try to understand what it's saying, and maybe even go back and see if you can implement what the feedback was. Natia?
What like flavor of SQL are we focusing on?
We are going to be using a Postgres database. Yeah, I think that's all I'll say for now. So that is all of these SQL exercises. And then the final thing here is an intro to Rails. So this one, we don't need quite as much of an intro. This one really was written by Turing instructors. So this should be pretty straightforward for you all to follow along with. And so it is a little bit longer, but this is really truly a tutorial style. There's no like follow-up exercises or anything. So work through this tutorial, do your best to try to understand what's in this tutorial. If you have extra time, I think going back and trying to do this again is a good idea. And even if you want to go a step further, so this app is Task Manager, where it's managing, it's kind of like a to-do list tracker, but you could do something where you pick a different noun. So like tasks, maybe I do like dogs or something, and try to implement what it is doing in here, but with a different noun like dogs, or with what's similar to tasks, something like you can make chores as something a little bit easier. So that's totally optional if you want to go a step further, but if not, you can just work through this tutorial as is. And yeah, it's fairly long, and then you've got some checks for understanding at the end here. And then all the way at the bottom, there is a completed version if you need a copy of the answers. Lee?
Do you mind saying again what the thing was that we could like choose a different noun for? I was writing and missed that.
Yeah, it's this whole tutorial here. So we're creating Task Manager. So this will allow us to create tasks, read tasks, so look at all the tasks or a specific task, update tasks, and delete tasks. So CRUD is kind of like the basics of what an app should be able to do. You should be able to manipulate your data with these 4 actions. If you want to go a step further, you could pick a different noun, and instead of Task Manager, you could make it Dog Manager, or you could make it House Manager, or whatever, just you pick a noun. And so you would essentially be doing these CRUD actions for those nouns. So if I pick dogs, I would be creating an app that would allow me to create a dog, look at all the dogs or a specific dog, update a dog, delete a dog, et cetera, et cetera. Again, totally optional. That's good practice. And that's kind of something that we want you to be very good at by the end of Mod 2. So if you want to get a head start on it, this would be a good place to do it. And if I go back to my intermission work, I think that is everything. Yeah. Yeah, that's everything. What other questions do y'all have? Mark?
I was just curious, what's the time box for this whole thing? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, we don't want to be overly prescriptive about when you should be doing everything. So the general time boxes would be for styling, we're probably looking at 2 hours for the static challenge. And then I would say maybe 2 hours for each of the other tutorials. Maybe this will help you answer a little bit more. If I were a student and I was working through this intermission work, what I would do is I would try to get some of this install stuff set up, try to get this out of the way either tonight or tomorrow, just so that's like one less thing I can work on. I would probably want to take the weekend off to not do anything and just finish mod 1. Yay, I'm gonna celebrate this weekend. And then Monday, I'm gonna get right back at it. And so Monday, I would work through this styling section. So this would be about 6 hours total. So I think about 2 hours for each of these tutorials and then about 2 hours to apply what I've learned. So I'd probably spend about maybe close to a full day of work working on the styling section. Then I'd probably take a break on Tuesday and do something else, do something fun for me. Then I'd take Wednesday to do something similar. I'd probably set aside Wednesday and Thursday because it said 6 hours for the exercise. So I would probably leave another 2 hours for the tutorial. So I'd probably do like most of my work on Wednesday and then maybe a little bit of work in the morning if I needed to finish up on Thursday. And then I would take the rest of Thursday off. And then on Friday, I would get into that tutorial. And if I needed to finish anything up, I have Saturday, but should be able to finish up the tutorial in one day and just kind of have another free weekend. So the way I would break it up is into 3 full days of work, 1 day for styling, 1 day for SQL, 1 day for task manager tutorial, and maybe have to do some cleanup work depending on if there's any overflow time. Now, if you all prefer to like work half days, you could do that too. So I could work half day on Monday doing the first part of the styling, half day on Tuesday to do the static challenge, half day on Wednesday to work through half of the SQL, half day on Thursday to work through the other half of the SQL, and then half day on Friday, half day on Saturday to just finish up the tutorial and anything else. So I would say in total, this should be about like somewhere between 20 and 30 hours of work. So definitely not like a full work week and definitely not a full Turing work week.
Thanks. Also, just curious on the install for the Rails, that 525, is that just essentially the same instructions? We can just do it on our own? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's the same instructions. Just to really point it out here, rather than doing gem install Rails version 5243, you would just change this to 525. Yeah.
Do you have a, oh, sorry, interrupted. I didn't raise my hand, I'm so sorry.
Go for it.
Is there a quick way, because I have 5243, oh, I have that Rails 5243 on here. Do you have a quick command that'll tell me how to update it? Or should I just look it up?
No, I can show you. I believe it's somewhere in here if I can hunt it down. Oh, here we go. If you get a version of Rails besides 5.2, so this would say 5.2.5. So if you're on 5.2.4.3, there's a link here that walks you through how to uninstall a version of Rails and reinstall another version.
Perfect.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions? Oh, Bob.
Brian, who's your favorite student from the group so far and why? I'm just kidding.
The brown stick, the two students who are telling the brown stick jokes. I don't know anyone's name so
Damn
far.
right.
Brown stick jokes.
Alex and Lawrence.
Bob, who does he need to watch out for?
Everyone.
I'm sure you all will be my favorites by the end of the mod. Zach.
So I have two versions of Ruby installed. I have 2.5.3 and 2.7.2. Do I need to uninstall 2.5.3?
No, you're good to you leave that version installed. You want to use this command rbenv local to set your to set that version of Ruby to 2.7.2. So you don't need to uninstall 2.5.3. You just need to set it to 2.7.2. And so what you can do is if you are organizing your folders, similar to how I am. So if I cd up a directory, I have this 2 module directory. So I have a Turing 2 module directory. If you do the command here in this directory, rbenv local 2.7.2, this will essentially set that Ruby version for everything that is underneath that 2 module folder. So if I clone a repo into this folder or any subfolders, so for instance, I have like a classwork folder. Now I can go down here and do ruby-v, and I'll see that this is 2.7.2. And if I do rbenv versions, this should tell me that I'm on 2.7.2, and it even tells me where it was set. So it's that 2 module directory. There's a hidden file, which is what the dot means, called .ruby version that essentially says all of the code or every, anytime you're using Ruby in any subdirectory of 2 module, it's going to be 2.7.2.
Okay, I
Rails,
set mine. What?
No, go for it.
I did set mine in my root directory as 2.7.2 as my default. Is that a good thing to do?
Yeah, that's fine. That just means if it's in your root directory. So like if I just do cd without any dots on it, if I just do cd, this will take me to users Brian's Ante. Is this kind of where you put it, Zach?
Yes.
Yeah, so this would essentially mean if I set it here, rbenv local 2.7.2, this would mean pretty much any file that I was any Ruby I'm working on in any of my like user namespace, that would all be on 2.7.2. So if you wanted to switch versions for mod 3 or 4 or something like that, that would make it a little bit more difficult. But you could certainly figure that out later.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome. Just one small piece of terminology here. This directory I would refer to as the home directory. And another way that you can navigate to this directory, you can just do cd without anything, or you can do cd tilde. The tilde represents this home directory. This is essentially your logged in user. The root directory of your computer is just slash. So cd slash. And this is where you find things like applications. This is where the users folder is. This is where some other things are. So just a little bit of computer terminology here. This is the root directory. And then this one with my name here is my home directory. Other questions? Anything else? Do we have a student named Jameson? Oh, fun.
We do now.
Do we have a Brian? Disappointing. All right, y'all. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap us up here. I have a note to update that install version with the latest versions of Ruby and Rails that we want you all to use. And I'm going to figure out a time to do that install party for y'all that are having some install issues. So I will get back to you all with that, and I'll also post this recording when it's done converting. And that's it. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.